Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Well, on a surrendered Lynette, my name is Flo D. You are a beautiful bunch of diseased people. About all I can say is how sweet it is. I introduce a lot of my girls down in Los Angeles, and I bring them in, and I say, this is my flower garden, a bunch of blooming idiots. I want to begin by thanking the committee for hosting me, and it's been one of the greatest days of my life. I felt it when I arrived, and it's here in the room this morning. It's power, it's love, it's God. And I only hope that everybody in this room feels what I feel this morning. Give you an idea how long I drank. I started drinking in the roaring 20s, and I ended up in the dirty 50s. I got here at a very metallic age. I had silver in my hair, and I had gold in my teeth, and I had lead in my ass. About the only thing Alcoholics Anonymous has eliminated is the lead. I'm especially grateful to stand here this morning. I publicly thank God and Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's you people. For my sobriety, I'll have 15 years. Come November, it hasn't been necessary for me to take a drink or a pill. And I'd like to say now I've never had a pill problem. But my doctor's trying to go out of that because he's having a hell of a time getting me off of birth control pills. One of my friends said, boy, she sure hangs on to her old ideas. I'm like our beautiful friend Jim. I love the laughter. And if you're like I am, or was, I should say, I hadn't laughed in a long time, and I remember the first time I laughed at an AA meeting, and after the meeting I was laughing more. And somebody said to my beautiful husband, listen to Flo laugh. And he said, it sounds great. She cried long enough. And that's the way I feel about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. My program is KISS, and if I've kissed any of you new people, I'm trying to give you the message. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's just about what I've done. I've done the necessary things that for me has made, as I told you earlier, over 14 years of beautiful, happy, comfortable living. And that's what I wasn't. I wasn't comfortable for a long, long time. In the beginning of my drinking, I started, as I told you, in the roaring 20s, bootleg days, and I never got all I wanted. I was a gulper and wanted more from the very beginning. I didn't get it. I was something like the cat that jumped on the skunk. He didn't get all he wanted, but he got all he could stand. I did. You better believe it. I got all I wanted. Booze, too. 7 children. I'm the only alcoholic in the family. But there was dear old Dad, and he was a drunk. They didn't know him as alcoholics in those days. And when I was growing up, I heard my mother say, and she said it many times to me, "You're going to grow up to be just like your dad." I had the ingredients, and she knew it. And I used this, and many times even after I got in the program, I would stand at the podium and say, I thought I had been born a drunk, an alcoholic, because of my father. Now, the day I was born, the doctor didn't go to my mother and say, "You just gave birth to a 6.5-pound alcoholic." But I used my father, and I was even sober in the program several months, and one of my sponsors heard me make this remark one night, and she said, "Flo, you're using your father as an excuse for you being an alcoholic." And going home from the meeting that night, I got to thinking, I thought, hell, I could have blamed him for a lot of things that happened to me. Like my first date. I went out with this young man. My father went up to him and said, "Now remember, I want her in bed by 10 o'clock, and I was. Down to the nitty-gritty pretty soon. I have to get comfortable. I love laughter, and I usually do this because it makes me feel good. I hope you're enjoying it. At the age of 15, I developed bronchial asthma. And at the age of 20, between wheezes and sneezes, I had found there was a difference between boys and girls. And at the age of 20, I was engaged to a man, and he was a man. He was 33 years old, and this old boy was from Louisville, Kentucky. He had a ring around his nose from drinking out of a mason jar. I'm glad to hear you know what a mason jar is. I spoke at an under 40 group in Los Angeles several years ago, and after I got through talking, this hippie came up to me, and he said, "I got a question to ask you, Flo." And immediately I raised my eyes and I said, "Dear God, let me have the right answer." And he said to me, "What the hell's a mason jar?" My asthma, like my drinking, had progressed, and at the age of 20, the family doctor finally convinced me it was asthma. It wasn't passion like I thought it was. And that if I wanted to live, I had better come out west. Now, I had a sister that left home because of my father's drinking, and she was told of my illness, and she came back home. She brought me out to California to the land of fruit and nuts, and I've been there ever since. At that time, I was able to have a choice, and I choose to be a nut. This sister, as I told you, left home because of my father's drinking, and little did she know that she was to be hooked up with an alcoholic. I'm very grateful to this woman today because she was the one that kept me alive until I came to you people, and you people saved my life. We didn't know much. We came from the middle-class family. We didn't have a lot of money, and so we had to go into some kind of a business. And I suggested one, but she said, "Oh, no." We went into the cafe business. We were very successful, and I'd like to give the credit to my sister. She had the brain and the brawn. And we had men customers, and I knew we were in the land of grapes, and I asked them. They surely had it out here somewhere. And so they invited my sister and I to go out for the evening, and naturally they took us to a homebrew joint. Now, I was delighted. I was in hog heaven. I loved it. But she didn't like it. But I kept going back. And she kept telling me what was going to happen to gals like me that went to those kind of places. And I said the same famous last word, "But it isn't going to happen to me." And again, I'd like to say it's just through the grace of God that a lot of things didn't happen to me. Eventually a man came into my life, and he was a salesman, and he was a darn good salesman. And he told me this bit about how foolish to be paying half of my sister's rent when I could be paying half of his. That began, which was to follow many more. Lighthouse keeping, I think we called it in those days. But I think today they call it room and heavy, right, teenager? Right. These things were all necessary for me. I'm not ha-ha happy about a lot of things that happened to me. But I'm a believer that everything, every rotten stinking drink I took and every rotten thing that happened to me had to happen to me to get me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And this went on for many years. I wore Johnny out like I was to wear many people out. I didn't know about you gals, but I wore an awful lot of people out. Awful lot of people out. And they kept sending me back to this beautiful sister. Thank God. She kept her door swinging both ways, took me in, put the serenity blanket over me, slapped me on the wrist, and said, don't do that anymore. And I tried. I tried with everything in me. I didn't like sobriety. I never had liked it, and I wasn't about to. I looked at sober people. As I told you, I have this beautiful sister, and another one joined us later on. And sober people, to me, they look like hemorrhoids. Not only did they look like a hemorrhoid, but they were a hemorrhoid to me. I couldn't stand it. And so I had to go the route. I had to keep going back to these places. They sold the business to get me out of it. I got another job. I was still a good waitress. I'm a fast waitress, except when I drank, and then I was a half-ass waitress. I got a job in a hotel. I lost that because of booze, and I was to lose many more. I ended up, after many jobs in hotels, good hotels, I ended up down at 7th and Spring. You see, I'm getting real close to 4th in Los Angeles. And it was a place, they had a bar, they had a bartender. I cased the place before I went in. And they hired me. That night I went out and I told my friends what I was doing. I was going back to work, and we celebrated. I got to work the next day, and I was working a split shift. I had 2 hours off every day. My first day on the job, I went to this wonderful new boss of mine, and I told her that I have asthma. And the medicine that I take at night makes me very shaky. And, baby, my medicine was sure making me shaky. And I wondered if it would be all right if I went and got a drink. And she said, sure, go to the bar and buy yourself one. And for 19 months I worked there, and I didn't do what the other waitresses done. They would take their cigarettes or coffee or their drink and go to the lounge and rest until it was time to come back to work. I stood at the bar. Now, I didn't get fired. They allowed it at that time if you didn't get drunk, and I didn't get drunk. I had a blast. I had a ball. I got many, many dates for 19 months, but towards the last of 19 months, my reputation was catching up with me. I was a hollow-legged, two-fisted drinker, a party gal, an expensive date is what I was. And I wasn't being taken out so much anymore, but I had one friend that came in every day. We drank together, swapped stories, patted each other on the back, I think. And he had asked me several times to go out with him, but I always had something going. And this afternoon, Jack came in, and we had our drink together, and I looked at him, and I said, Jack, how would you like to take me out tonight? And he said, I would love to, Flo. We made the arrangements. He drank his drink and left. And 20 minutes later, he came back, not to cancel the date, but to ask me if I could get a friend, that he had a friend would like to go out and have some fun. And there were 7 other girls working with me. We had been out together. We'd been on parties and dates together, but that was the trouble. We had been on parties and dates together, and they saw me drink and perform, and none of them would go. And I remembered my dear little old sis at home. The old girl ain't been out in a long time. I'll give her a break. And I invited her, and she said what the other 7 girls said, no thanks. How the hell I rascaled 2 before, of course, one at a time, I'll go. And I went, and Jack was there, and there was a big moose in the car. And he had a bottle, he had the car, and I had a desire. And we rode around for a little while, drinking out of the bottle. We got into Huntington Park, and Jack said, you're very close to where I live. You two seem to be getting along so beautiful. Why don't you go out and have yourself some fun? And we did. We made a night of it and half the next day. Now, 17 years later, when my husband's pointing his finger at me and he's telling me about my drinking, I remind him of that first night. I tell him, like, man, you must have known the first night that there was 2 things I liked to do, and I'd done very well, and one of them was drink. And he said, I didn't think it would last so long or it would get so bad. And about the only thing I could say was, neither did I. I had no idea that alcohol was going to rob, steal, take away everything that was near and dear to me. I had no idea. Dee and I, we had a on-again, off-again romance. Dee knew immediately he couldn't take me in for a drink. A drink for me was a drunk. I didn't know it either. I know it today. I remember the girls that called on me very well when they said, it's the first drink that gets you drunk. And I said, BS, you know. I buy it 100%. I've said it 100 times from the podium, or maybe more, that it is the first drink that gets us drunk. It's just like if we were to go out here, God forbid, but if we were to get hit by a train, it's going to be the engine that gets us. It ain't going to be the caboose. We had an on-again, off-again romance. Dee left a while, but he always came back with a bottle. He said somewhere along the line, I had given him the message that candy was handy, but liquor was quicker. And he wanted to get in, he knew what. And it was just went on and on and on. In 40, Dee went to San Diego, and he got on at the train station as a civilian. And he wooed me. He came up over the weekend, took a lot of money and time, and he didn't have very much of either. And about the 5th or 6th week, he wrote me a little note, and it said, pack your ditty bag, baby. I'm coming up to get you. And I was delighted. Somebody wanted me, and somebody needed me. Everybody wants to be wanted, and everybody needs to be needed. And I was very happy. And we went to San Diego, and we eventually got married. I say eventually because for a long time in AA, I was known as the girl that fell out of bed when her husband proposed to her. Now, Dee told me after I was in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that somewhere going down to San Diego that I told him that I was not going to drink so much. Now, this is the story of my life. I never went on the wagon, and I'm kind of glad, because in AA they told me going on the wagon is just transportation to your next drunk. And so I was always going to watch it. I was not going to drink so much. We went to San Diego. I didn't work. I drew my rocking chair money. And again, I say, I don't know about you people, but for me, time on my hands is very, very dangerous. I have to do something every day. I tell my new friends, I don't give a damn if you scrubbed your floors yesterday, you scrub them again today. I have to do something every day. If it's like taking an old lady across the street who don't want to go across the street. We had a private number, and I gave it to privates only. There was a war on, and there was a... My husband, like my sister, said, maybe you better go back to work. And I went out and I found a job. They had a beer sign in the window, waitress wanted, and I went in and they hired me. The next day, as I was going out back to put on my uniform, on the meat block was a bottle of that 69. Man, I knew somebody there liked to drink like me. I came out. My boss said, how about a drink? And I said, fine. And he poured me a big hooker in a water glass. I worked my lunch, and I came back, and I said, is it okay if I have a beer with my lunch? And he said, sure, but maybe you'd like another drink, and I did. We had been in a lot of liquor stores. We found people in San Diego that were living one day at a time. We didn't know it then, but we were. We played hard. We worked hard. We drank hard. We had lots and lots of parties at our home. We'd been in a lot of liquor stores. I did not see that 69 on the shelves. We had to drink that Panther stuff down there. And so I asked my boss. I said, looks like you can get this scotch awful easy. What does it take to get it? And he says, all it takes is money, honey. And I said, order me a case. I knew I'd have the money because I was working as cash register. Again, that tells you what I was like. And so I started bringing scotch home by the case. My husband was not alarmed because we had lots of parties. And I remember one time I told him, I said, Dee, I got another case of scotch out in the car. He says, Jesus, honey, we got 2.5 cases under the bed. And I'm sort of a smart ass, and I said, well, isn't that beautiful? I know a lot of people that only have springs under their bed. I was scared to death. Scared to death any day they was going to stop making it, and I would have to, miss out. I'm scared to death. And this is the story of my life until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. We moved around several times in San Diego. The last job, the last place we lived, it was at Ocean Beach, and I got a job in La Jolla. And I told Dee, I was going to find a job where they didn't sell anything to drink. Just maybe, Maybe, I didn't know whether I had no idea I was drinking too much, but maybe I didn't like what was happening around the house. He was beginning to, kind of look at me a little odd. I was going to say queer, but that's not the way to say it. So I found a job in La Jolla, and they didn't sell anything to drink, but I was just as drunk when he came home at 4:45 as I had been any place where they served it. And you see, the place I was working in was next door to a liquor store. They had a back door, we had a back door, and we kept it swinging. I was working for a good, hollow-legged, two-fisted drinker. The manager was terrific, and we just got along beautiful. In 51, everybody has turning points in their life, and we had one. Dee came to me and he said, "I'm sorry, honey, but we're going to have to return to Los Angeles." And I said, like, "Man, you have to be crazy. Why leave this place?" You know, I was riding on the merry-go-round. I have to tell you, in those 11 years in San Diego, my husband loved me. And he told me so many, many times. And he told me many, many times that he was proud of me. Sometimes he told me I was the hostess with the most to drink. But he was always proud of me, and he loved me. And he told me so many, many times. But he made the mistake of telling me that we could have gone to San Francisco. But he decided on Los Angeles. Now, you know, that was a wrong thing to say to me. You know, he should have asked me where I wanted to go. And he was taking Candy away from the baby. Now, for 11 years, I didn't have to throw any fits, and I didn't have to throw any tantrums, because everything was going my way. I had no problem with alcohol. When I didn't have any problem with alcohol, I didn't have any problem with people, places, and things. Now, I began to behave very badly. I didn't get my way. I wanted to go to San Francisco, but he said, "We're returning to Los Angeles." And so I returned, and the day, I'd like to tell you about the day we left San Diego. It was the day I bellied up to this man. And I told him, "I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you for doing this to me. I'll go to Los Angeles with you, but I'm not going to like or love anybody. And I'm not going to let anybody like or love me." Now, I'm a people lover. I love people, and I need people. The more people I have around me, the happier I am. And I did exactly this. I came to Los Angeles with all this hate, resentment, and bitterness, and it locked up in my heart. And it stayed locked up until I came to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was here that I found the key that opened up that heart. And the key that I found was love. And the way they spell love in Alcoholics Anonymous is H-E-L-P. When I allowed you to help me, and when I allowed you to love me, that's when my heart opened up, and all that hate, bitterness, and resentment came out. But I was to go the route that I had to go. I came up, and I drank around the clock. I'll show you. I became very bitchy. I bitched about things that never happened, like our beautiful friend Chuck C. says, it gives us a chance to get drunk at. And this is what I did. I got drunk at this man many, many times. I became very bitchy. I was something like the story of the three bears. A Papa Bear came out one morning and said, "Somebody ate my porridge." And the baby bear came out and said, "Somebody ate my porridge too." And the mama bear came out and says, "Bitch, bitch, bitch, I haven't even made it yet." We were up here 11 years, and I became, 11 months, and I became horribly, horribly ill. And I was hospitalized, and I was in the hospital 10 days. I looked like part of the plumbing. I was dismissed from the hospital with a large sheet of paper. They had found an ulcer at the opening of my stomach. And on top of this large sheet of paper was absolutely no alcohol. Now, to show our new friends that's here today the insanity we talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous, it is not the insane things we do while drinking. I'm sure if they'd have put that much booze in my sisters, they too would have done the insane things I'd done. Sleeping in the bathtubs, in the back of other people's strange cars, the lampshade bit, or like the time my husband told me I was trying to get my slacks off over my head and damn near cut myself in two. The insanity we talk about is when I came out with that large sheet of paper, my husband got me in the car, and the first liquor store, the very first liquor store we came to, I threw a fit, a tantrum. I jumped up and down in the seat of the car, and I said to my husband, and I got a big flapping mouth, and I can make a lot of noise, and I said, "Stop the car," and he said, "For what?" And I said, "You go in that liquor store and you get me a bottle of vodka." And he pointed to the piece of paper I had on my lap, and he said, "It says up there, honey, absolutely no alcohol. If you drink, you'll die." And I said, "What a way to go, man. What a way to go." And he knew me. As I said, I got a big flapping mouth. And he went in that liquor store and he got me a bottle of vodka. And we came home from that hospital. We went down some side streets. And I came home from that hospital half smashed. Now, this is the insanity we talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is when I began my insane drinking. You know, what's there to live for? Where can you go? Everybody drinks, booze is all around you. What can I do? And I drank to die. I remember hearing beautiful friend Eddie C. talk about it, the bad days. And he said it got so tough it was like swimming up a stream of cold molasses. And baby, that's the way my days got. More and more pulling the covers up over my head and say, God, it's going to be another one of those days. Another one of those days. And it's through the prayers of my wonderful husband and my small family that I lived, I'm sure, because I prayed to die. I wanted to die. But I lived, and in 54, I became I want. And I bargained with everybody, even God. And I told this wonderful husband I wanted a home so we could go back to those beautiful 11 years we had in San Diego. I always remembered the good years. I didn't want to remember the bad. And so I asked him, shouldn't we go out and find a nice little house? And he looked at me and he said, I'm afraid you're not going to live to enjoy it. Well, we went out and we found a nice little house in Pico Rivera. And believe me, that's all it was. Just a house. There was no love. There was no communication. And as I know it today, there was no God in that home. We moved that home in November of 54. And for the next 3 years, I went Santa Fe all the way. I went to the end of the line. I got out and laid tracks. I went farther. My husband called me a wino, and if I could have picked the skillet up off the stove, I'd have hit him in the head with it. But he took me out to the garage, and he showed me a barrel full of wine bottles. I got a beautiful education when I came to the program. We have Cleo, a beautiful friend of ours in Rivera, and she said she used to get up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning with gunny sacks and a hammer and go out and break your wine bottles so nobody'd know how many. And I thought, God, I was smart. Why didn't I think of that, But I accepted the fact that I was a wino. I became very, very ill. My husband suggested I find a doctor in this new area, and I did. I was so happy, so very happy when I came to the program and I heard the A, B's, and the C's read. Probably no human power could relieve us of our alcoholism. And I thought, my God, that's true. Because I don't know about you people, but I tried every human power. Many, many doctors, psychiatrists once, and it's my opinion and only my opinion, anybody who goes to a psychiatrist ought to have their head examined while drinking. While drinking, that is. Some of us need it after we get here. I was prayed over, I was sung over, I was sprinkled, I was dunked. I went to many, many churches. I'd like to tell you about the last time I went to church while drinking. We had a party going on a Saturday night, and this sister of mine came who had found a beautiful way of life in a church, and she kept thinking that I, too, could find it there. And I knew what she'd come for. I hadn't been to church with her in a long time, and she immediately put a wet blanket on the party, and I suggested that she go home, and tomorrow I'd come by and we'd go to church together. And she was delighted, and she left. And then we went on with our party, and we had a blast. And the next morning, I'm standing at the kitchen sink drinking and puking. And my husband come by, and he said, I see you're getting ready for church. Sounds like somebody knows what I'm talking about. I got one to stay down, and then I took one for the road, and I met my sister, and she had her next-door neighbor with her, and we went to church. And he was a long-winded preacher, long-winded like I am, and they were up there singing the last hymn, and my booze stopped working for me. I'm sure a lot of you in the room know what I'm talking about. My blood became ice water, my legs became a piece of wet spaghetti, and I did what I had been doing for a long time, just sort of folded up. When I got sober, somebody said to my husband, how do you like Flo sober? And he said, my God, I love it. I don't have to get on my knees to talk to her anymore. They took all 6 feet of me down the aisle, and I came to in the back room, and some little old sister was rubbing my wrist and looking in my pink eyes. And she said, honey, would you like a drink? And I said, oh, my God, yes. And you guessed it, she brought me water. I knew they had that Cucamonga Kool-Aid there, and that's what I should have got. I left there screaming that I was to scream many more times after that, but nobody understands me. But nobody understands me. And this is what I screamed into November of 57, when 2 beautiful women sat alongside of my bed, and they told me about themselves, and I told them about me, and they nodded their head. At last, somebody understood. I was to die many times in this home, and I did. I'm glad, because coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, you are reborn again. And in order to be reborn again, I believe we have to die. The ambulance was called in his home, and I was rushed to the hospital, and I had 3 major operations in 18 months. I'd like to tell you about my last operation when this beautiful doctor sat alongside the bed, and he looked at me. First I looked at him, and I said, "Why don't you tell me, man, I'm dying of cancer?" I thought I had it. Many of us do. Like I thought I had heart attacks. I would wake this poor husband of mine up in the middle of the night, and I'd shake him and say, "Daddy, get me some help. My heart has stopped." And towards last, he'd just roll over and look at me, and he'd say, "You're okay, baby. Your mouth is going." Looked at me and he said, "I got news for you, Mrs. D. Cancer's too decent of a disease for you to die with." He looked at me and he said, "I'd like to tell you about your last operation." He said, "You have 60% liver left." And I looked at him and I shrugged my shoulders and I said, "That's a lot of liver." I have a friend down in San Diego. They showed him a picture of his liver and it scared him so bad he had to go out and get drunk. This is what happened to me. I came home for the next 7 months. I went back to my Santa Fe wine, and in those 7 months I tried taking my life. I couldn't stand it. I loved Shirley the other night when she spoke about the mirrors in her home. She had to cover them up because those mirrors were telling me a story that I didn't like. I didn't like what I was seeing, and I didn't like what I was hearing, and I didn't like what I saw in the eyes of my loved ones. It was getting less and less to look into the eyes of my husband because I didn't like what I saw. I saw pity and I saw disgust. And I tried taking my life, and I know what it is to lay in that hospital 5 days looking at the ceiling and saying, "My God, I've even failed at this." My husband brought me home, and I went back to my Santa Fe wine. November of 57, I was going to be 50 years old, and I told Dee I'm entitled to one good drunk because I'm going over the hill. And I came to you people and you told me I'd been over the hill a long time. I started drinking my sherry wine. We have Thanksgiving there. We were invited to a relative's home. And my husband was a truck driver. But I don't know about you. I've heard a few other gals since I've been here at this conference. I heard you talk about being the best drivers. And that was me. I was the best driver, especially when I drank. You know, nobody could get my keys, not even when I was on the floor in the parking lot, you know. Hell, I'd have swallowed them before you got them. So I looked at this wonderful husband of mine, and I said, "If we're going over to that home, why, I'll do the driving." And so I drove over with a bottle of wine between my legs. We got there, and my nephew looked at me and he said, "Oh, my God, no." He opened up the door, and I fell out. Got in the house, they had more to drink, I drank more. We got to the table, my face fell in the plate. And somebody suggested that I take a nap. And I did. I took one of those long 10-minute naps that we take. And I swore I'd been sleeping hours, and I got up and I said, "I've been a good kid. I've done what you told me to. Now I can have a drink." And I was 86 from that home. And I was told they cared if they never saw me again, drunk or sober. And I looked for my husband, and he wasn't in the house. And he told me later that at that time he was walking back and forth in front of my nephew's home. And he said he stopped just for a second. And he raised his eyes and he said, my God, if there is a way, show me so I can help this woman." And it was the next night that he called Alcoholics Anonymous. He took me home, he bought me a bottle of wine, again to stop my big flapping mouth. And I drank and passed out that night. The next morning, Friday morning, I wakened early, as most of us know, 3 o'clock in the morning, the sweating hour. And I had become known to lay there for the next 3 hours until Dee got up. And I'd laid there until Dee got up, and I heard his car drive down the driveway, and Dee went to work. And I got up and I found the bottle, enough in it to get me well. I got the keys to my car, went and got my half a gallon of sherry wine, came back with my dirty cheese glass, and sat and looked and wished. I don't know, I had become a dead-end kid. I was a go-go girl when I drank. There was a lot of bounce to the ounce for many, many years. But towards last, I couldn't get my fanny off of the sofa. I was not a topless go-go girl, I'd like to tell you. Hell, I wouldn't have even made a good topless waiter. About the only thing that isn't false about me is my program. I remember looking out my big picture window and seeing those beautiful women out there and wishing, as I had done for many months now, I wanted to be like those gals. I saw them raking the leaves, watering the lawn, walking to the store with their children. Of course, I didn't have any, but I would have used theirs. I wanted so desperately to be like those people. God, I wanted to be like them. And I wished, and I wished, and I wished. And I'd say tomorrow, my God, everybody in this room could write a book on tomorrows. And I'd say tomorrow it's going to be different. Tomorrow I'll get up, and I'll take one cheese glass of wine, and I'll go out and I'll join those women. And tomorrow would come, and I'd take that one cheese glass of wine, and I'd start down my driveway, and I fell apart. And I had to crawl back to my cheese glass and my half-gallon of sherry wine. And I don't remember much about this day, but I do remember standing at my turning point, and I spit at myself in the mirror. I knew that I had no more excuses left. I no longer could blame my father. I couldn't blame my sisters or my brothers. I could no longer blame this wonderful husband, the home I was living in, the cars that I was driving, the jobs I didn't have. I knew that day that I had done it to myself. And baby, that hurt. That hurt. And I went on and passed out, and he came home that night, and he came into the bedroom where I was in my favorite position, flat on my back. And he looked at me, and he turned and walked out. He made himself something to eat, and a little while later he came back. In the meantime, he had packed his bags. Now, Dee had told me the last year many times that he was going to have to leave me, and I would say, you know, ha, ha, ha. He wouldn't leave a living doll like me. He said one day, a doll? Yes, a crocodile, baby. But this night he came and he had his bags packed and he stood at the bedroom door and he looked at me. And the first time in many days that I was able to look in this man's face and eyes. And I saw again the pity and the disgust. And he looked at me and he said he was going to leave. But he said, before I go, Flo, I'd like to get you some help. Now, the help I thought I was going to get was my doctor, who had suggested Camarilla, a state hospital down south, the only place we can put alcoholics. And I thought I was going to Camarilla. And he looked at me and said, before I go, I'd like to get you some help. And he went to the phone, and he called Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank God. Thank God for a central office. Thank God for those dedicated people down there who listen to us whine and sniffle and cry. Evelyn, who is my godmother in Alcoholics Anonymous, said it's late. It's 7:45 on a Friday night. You better hang up so I can get you some help. The help I thought I was going to get was my doctor, who had suggested Camarilla, a state hospital down south, the only place we can put alcoholics. And I thought I was going to Camarilla. And he looked at me and said, before I go, I'd like to get you some help. And he went to the phone. And he called Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank God. Thank God for a central office. Thank God for those dedicated people down there who listen to us whine and sniffle and cry. Evelyn, who is my godmother in Alcoholics Anonymous, said it's late. It's 7:45 on a Friday night. You better hang up so I can get you some help. And the only help she could get was a man. And this man went to our Friday night Rivera meeting. And he brought these two beautiful gals into our home. And Clarence came and he had the big book, which is the authority. We're only here to share our experience, strength, and hope with each other. And Clarence read to my husband from the big book, and I'm sure Clarence said something like, if Flo can fulfill the conditions, if she can grasp and develop a manner of living. And believe me, that's just about what I've been doing for a little over 14 years, grasping and developing. And the two beautiful gals came into the bedroom where I was sitting on the pity pot, and I wailed and I cried, and I told him my problem was that so-and-so out in the other room, all I wanted to do was drink a half a gallon of sherry wine a day, and he bitched about it. And I told him how great I was, and it's awfully hard to be humble when you're so great. And I told him I had given him the best years of my life, and I'm sure my husband would have said, that's the best, forget it. I told him all about my operations. I even showed him my scars. These people are hard to convince. I told him how great I was, what a good housekeeper I was, and believe me, I was. My husband even accused me of blowing the dust out of the keyholes. That's how clean I was. Nobody was going to come in and tell me, if you took care of your housework, you wouldn't have time to drink. I was, something like a beautiful friend of mine. If he got up to go to the bathroom during the night, when he came back, the bed was made, you know. And they looked at me and they said, yes, dear, your house is beautiful. Your home seems to be in order, but how about you? And I thought, that broad, you know. Got x-ray eyes, and she's looking down and seeing all this dirt I got inside me. I was at a women's clothes meeting yesterday, and I identified with one of the girls. She was the cleanest gal. She kept taking baths and showers, and this was me. My God, I wanted to get rid of that dirt. I wanted to get rid of that dirt. And I came to AA, and I got a spiritual enema. That's the only way to get rid of it. Thank you, I agree. I'm very grateful to those beautiful gals. One has made the big meeting since. Two beautiful gals, and I looked at them and I smelt them, and they looked and smelt like women. And my God, I wanted to be like that. I wanted so badly to be like that. And one of my sponsors was sober 17 months, and I put the bananas in my ear because nobody could look like that and stay sober 17 months. But my other sponsor was a beautiful Mexican gal, and she had stars in her eyes, and she was alive, the bouncy kind, 5 weeks. I want to go out and save all those souls out there. And I looked at her, and 5 weeks without a drink. Mary Louise said the beautiful words to me that day. She said, it's been 5 weeks, honey, I haven't had a drink. In 5 weeks, I haven't wanted a drink. And they said, I sat straight up in bed, and I said, my God, tell me that again. And she did. Mary Louise was a beautiful woman. And I looked at her and I thought, 5 weeks, maybe I could live 5 weeks without drinking. When I die, I'll look a little better. And as I told you, it'll be 15 years in November. They told me I had to go to meetings where this thing was. And they talked an awful lot about this thing that night. And I didn't know what this thing was until I made my first meeting on a Sunday night. And it's here again, as I told you. It's power. It's God. It's love. My 50th birthday, I made it sober through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I died. And my husband, they had left the big book there. And when he could catch me, when I came down off the ceiling a few times, he had the big book in front of him, and he had a tall, cold bottle of beer alongside of him. And he said, listen to this, honey. Rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path, and he drank from the bottle. And I thought, relief is just to swallow away. But I had promised the girls that I would try. I would try not to take the first drink. And they had called me that day early. Our phone rang more that day than it had rang in the 3 years that we lived in that home. And everybody said, don't take the first drink. These girls had gone back to this Rivera meeting and gave my phone number out to other women there. My neighbors came over Saturday afternoon. They said, this is the night, baby, you know, finger popping night. It's her birthday. My husband nudged me and he said, you better tell him, honey. And so I looked at him and I said, Ruth, we've done something about my drinking. She says, oh, great, like what? And I said, we've called Alcoholics Anonymous. She said, that's fabulous. What is it? And Dee, who had read the book, quite a bit of it, and he went on to explain it. And they left, and about an hour later they came back with a box of candy and I threw up. My God, candy, you know. But I eat it today. I eat it today. And Sunday, it took me all day Sunday to get ready for this thing that I was going to. Again, I don't know about you women, but who spends money on clothes? They don't take you anywhere anyway. I went to a lot of meetings. I can't tell you. I love these people who say I went to 364 meetings my first year. I can't tell you how many meetings I went to. I don't know. It isn't important. But I went to as many meetings as was necessary for me. My sponsor immediately said, we have a beautiful women's meeting and we're going to go. And I threw up. God, I hated women. Oh, I hated you. You were prettier than I. You had children and I didn't have any children, and you were married more times than I. And I found out the only reason that was because you said I do, and I kept saying, why not? You know? very, very grateful to that women's group. I heard stories like my own. I met gals like me. I met a beautiful gal there, and she was doing a lot of institution work. Juanita's very dear to me. Juanita couldn't drive, and I took her to a lot of meetings, and she told me about her institution work, and I became very interested. I'm an alcoholic, arrested alcoholic that's never been arrested. And again, I say it's just through the grace of God. They just weren't in the right places at the right time. And Juanita told me a lot about her institution work, and I said, when can I belong? When can I go? And in our area, you have to be sober 1 year before you can go into any of the institutions. But she said, when you're 6 months sober, honey, I'll begin to take you into the institution meetings, and they'll get to know you and love you and find out that you are sincere. And when your year is up, you can go into some institutions. And this is what happened. I was sober 13 months. I was sober 14 months, and I reminded Juanita. And going into my 15th month, when she called me, she said, I have an opening at Psycho Ward at the General Hospital. Would you love to go? And I was doing waitress work at the time, and I gave up one of my days off to go to Psycho. And it was there that I found out, just but for the grace of God, it could have been I. I saw my first convulsion. I had never seen an alcoholic convulsion before. I was carrying the message, and the man was sitting in the chair. And he was telling me that I was, same thing I was to hear many, many times after, that Alcoholics Anonymous didn't work for him. And I told him what you told me. Alcoholics Anonymous will work if you work it. And I'm talking to him, and I'm giving him my very best AA pitch. And he slipped off the chair, and he went into a convulsion. A man came in, put a wallet in his mouth, and saved this man's life. We saw this man at a meeting 10 days later. I haven't seen him since, but I like to think somewhere that he's sitting in a chair today at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Later on, I was to meet another beautiful man, Bob Hugo. Bob found his sobriety at the Midnight Mission at 4th and Los Angeles. And he was talking in our area, and they were getting ready to put on a Christmas dinner down at the Midnight Mission for the unfortunates down there, less fortunate than you and I. And I was interested. And so after the meeting, I said, Bob, could I come down and help? And he said, we need women like you. Be delighted. And again, I like to tell you it was there that I saw, but for the grace of God. I have a beautiful friend in this room today, Liz. I met Liz there, and we shared many, many beautiful hours. We've loved the same winos, the yellow tennis shoes, the rusty zippers. I served 11 Christmas dinners down there. I know what it is to see those winos shuffle through. Some of them so shaky they couldn't even carry their trays. And these beautiful women standing there dishing up the food and wishing the boys Merry Christmas. And I saw the tears roll down the faces of many winos. On my right hand I can count 5 beautiful men that I know today, that are sober today, through the grace of God and the efforts of people like Liz and many more who were dedicated enough to return to those places and carry the message. 2 years ago at a Christmas party, I was given the title, a Mother of the Midnight Mission. And I've never had any children, and I like to think that I'm very fortunate because I have lots of them today. I've given up a lot since I've been sober. I was sober 7 years when I lost this beautiful husband. On a Saturday afternoon, he took me out and bought me a new car. I had been bitching about the one I had. It didn't have any pickup in it, you know. It was too slow for me. And he bought me this beautiful car. And 8 months later, I had to go on risk insurance. It had a beautiful pickup. He bought me this car on a Saturday afternoon, and Sunday morning he brought me coffee to bed, which I deserved. And 15 minutes later, this man had made the big meeting. Now, I didn't do what I would have done 7 years before, shaking my fist and said, why, God? I got help. And before I left the home, I called another member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you met me at the hospital, and you put your arms around me again, as you did 7 years before. And you told me the same message that you'd given me 7 years before. that you need never drink again as long as you live, no matter what happens to you. I took you home with me. You filled my home again with love, God, and strength. And everything went along beautiful. I was lonely. I told God that I don't like to live alone. And please send me somebody, but I forgot to mention the sex, and he sent me a gal. I'd like to tell you today I have better communication. My pipeline to my higher power is much better. I have a man living in my home now. He's my gardener without sex privileges. I lost a job after being on it for 11 years, and I was frightened. I was 63 years old, and I was scared to death. Too young to retire, young at heart anyway. Prior to losing that job, I was visiting my sister. She was doing missionary work, and she asked me if I could gather up some things for make boxes for the Christmas church donations. And so I had lots of things for her, and I was walking up her driveway, and I slipped. And I broke my right wrist. And she felt very sorry for me. She said, "Why don't you stay with me? I can help you dress, like help you put on your bra." And I told her I could put it on backwards and it'd fit, you know. I stayed there, and 18 days later, after I went out to have my hair dressed, and I came back into the house, my sister was standing in the middle of the living room, scared to death, and I took one look at her hand, and I couldn't believe what I saw. She had slipped and broken her right wrist. Now, I couldn't accept this. She's 75 years old, and I couldn't accept this. Happening to me was okay. But why her, God? Why her? I broke out with the shingles in my hair. I just couldn't believe this could happen to my beautiful sister. And one morning, about 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm very distressed and very unhappy and very miserable. And I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, and I'm shaking my fist at God, and I'll say, "God, why? Why her?" You know. And all of a sudden, I stopped, and a great, big, loud voice came down and said, "You know, Flo, there's something about you that pisses me off." To the third step. I don't have any bad days, really. I don't have any bad days in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have bad hours. I am a human being. Sometimes a phone call distresses me, or many things like that. I was unemployed, and I drew my rocking chair money, and one day a voice on the other end of the phone said, "I understand you're not working. How would you like to be house mother?" And I immediately, and it was not my words, I had not thought about it, and I said, "Hell yes, it sounds great." Now, I thought they meant a men's 12-step house. I ended up being a house mother out in North Hollywood at the Vesper House, a beautiful home, and a beautiful woman took me under her wing. And she broke me into being assistant house mother, and I owe an awful lot to Bobby. She opened up a whole new door for me. I was there 4 months, and I got a phone call where they needed me in Pasadena. Now, Pasadena, perhaps like Oregon, wasn't ready for me. I transferred from the Vesper House to Pasadena, and I was 9 months in Pasadena. And I'd like to tell you they weren't ready for me. I talked to a lot of gals out there who think they got platinum ovaries. You know, they walk like they do anyway. And I'm a wino. I wasn't asked to leave, but I felt I better. And I'm now in a beautiful home out in Covina, where I feel the same thing that's in this room today. I am loved, I am wanted, and I am needed. And it's all through the grace of God and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
15 years ago, I had no purpose and no direction in my life. Today I have a rich, full life. Today I feel like the gal that broke the strap on her bra. My cup runneth over. I've met thousands of you beautiful people. I've never felt love like this before. Never. I knew love. I knew the kind of love. I'm the gal that'll tell you that I had to come to AA to find out the difference between being in love and being in heat. I think alcoholics are very fortunate. We get to live 2 lives in one lifetime. To be a teenager again when I was 13 on the program. You see, I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm living on borrowed time. I should have been dead. They told me I should have been dead. I'm very, very grateful to every day that I can put these feet of mine on the floor. I thank God as I understand Him. When I was very new, Mary Louise, my sponsor, and I made a pitch at one of our 12-step homes on Hoover down in Los Angeles, small little 12-step home. When we walked in there, I saw a sign on the door, and it said, "How many times have you thanked God today?" And I said to Mary Louise, I'm going to make a practice of thanking God many times during the day. And this is what I have done. I never forget to thank God when I go to bed at night. I wake up in the morning and I ask just that His will be done. I think most of us are something like the story of the old violin. Many of you have heard it. The auctioneer that was auctioning it off. And it was battered and beat up and scratched up like many of us get to the program. And he raised his old violin and he says, "What am I bid? Do I hear $50? Do I hear $75? Do I hear $100? And pretty soon an old gentleman from the back of the room came up and he picked up the bow. And he played beautiful music from this violin. And he laid it down, and the auctioneer picked it up again. And he said, "What am I bid? Do I hear 2,000? Do I hear 3? Do I hear 5? And somebody says, "What happened?" And he was answered, "It was touched by the Master's hand." I like to think that's what happened to me. I like to think that's what's happened to you. We have truly been touched by the Master's hand. I don't know if I've said anything that's going to help anybody today. But being here with you people has certainly helped me. I invite you to our Southern California. Look me up. I'm in the phone book. If there's anything I can do for you, I'm most happy to. You have shown me a lot of love. You have given me a lot of love. I love you for it. If there's any gift that I could give back to any of you, I'd like to give the gift of love. So I give it back to you this morning. Thank you very much. God bless you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.